Have you ever met someone who unsettled you, but you couldn't explain why? Their words were kind, their smile was warm, their behavior, polite, even generous, but still, something deep in your body tensed, as if a hidden warning system, older than language, was whispering, "Something is wrong here." Carl Jung believed that the most dangerous forces in human psychology aren't the ones we see, but the ones we deny. And when someone is controlled by these unseen forces, they may appear charming, confident, or deeply spiritual on the surface, while unknowingly carrying an inner chaos that distorts everything they touch. This video is not about obvious villains or cartoonish narcissists. It's about the quiet signs, the patterns of behavior that reveal when someone is out of alignment with their true self. According to Jung, these people are not only dangerous to others, they are walking time bombs for themselves. Let's begin with the first and perhaps most sinister sign. Sign number 1. They project their darkness onto you and believe it's truth. You're in a conversation and suddenly, you're being accused of motives you don't have. Maybe they say you're manipulative, or selfish, or jealous. But you didn't do anything to warrant it. And yet, their conviction is total. They don't seem to be lying. They genuinely believe what they're saying. Carl Jung called this shadow projection, and he considered it one of the most destructive forces in human relationships. The shadow is everything we reject about ourselves: envy, rage, cowardice, arrogance, cruelty. We don't want to admit these parts exist within us, so instead, we shove them into the basement of our psyche, into the unconscious. But what we bury doesn't vanish. It leaks out, it attaches itself to others, and eventually, it turns people into mirrors for our denied self. When someone projects their shadow, they're not seeing you at all. They're seeing themselves, in disguise. And the more unaware they are, the more dangerous it becomes, because they're not lying in the traditional sense. They truly believe the version of you they've created. They are certain that you are the problem, never realizing that what they hate in you is what they've refused to face in themselves. This is not just psychology. It's spiritual warfare in disguise. In Buddhism, it's the deluded mind mistaking its own impurity for the faults of others. In Christianity, it's the parable of the man who sees a speck in his brother's eye but not the beam in his own. The terrifying part? People under the spell of projection often gain allies, because their conviction is persuasive. And if you're not grounded in your own clarity, you might begin to wonder, am I really what they say I am? This is how inner chaos spreads outward, through certainty, not confusion. Jung once wrote, "Everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves. But for those who are unconscious of their shadow, it leads not to wisdom, but to destruction." The moment you feel accused of a motive you do not own, when someone speaks about you with an eerie certainty that doesn't match reality, take a step back. You are not talking to a person anymore. You are talking to their ghost, and that ghost is not yours to exercise. Sign number 2. They are obsessed with being good, but something feels off. You meet someone who radiates goodness. They volunteer. They speak of love and light. They always say the right things. At first, it's inspiring, but then something strange happens. Their kindness feels too polished. Their humility feels performative. And you notice a subtle tension in the room whenever someone challenges their opinions. Jung called this ego inflation, a dangerous psychological state where a person begins to identify their personality with something larger than themselves, not in the humble sense of spiritual connection, but in the terrifying sense of believing they are above being wrong. This isn't arrogance in the usual way, it's much more deceptive, because this person believes they are acting out of virtue, but what they've really done is confuse their ego with their ideal self. They're not just trying to be good, they think they are good, completely, unquestionably, untouchably, and that makes them dangerous. Why? Because if they do something hurtful, they won't see it. They'll justify it. They'll twist it into a moral act, because in their story, they are the hero. Always. Zen monks warned about this thousands of years ago. They called it Zen sickness, the illusion of enlightenment without the humility to recognize one's own shadow. The Sufis warned of the veil of light, a kind of spiritual delusion more dangerous than darkness because it feels pure. The warning sign? They never question themselves. They speak as if they have direct access to the divine, and any challenge to their behavior isn't seen as a disagreement, It's seen as an attack on truth itself. Jung saw this often in leaders, gurus, and ideologues. Their unwavering certainty would attract followers because we all crave clarity. But clarity without self-awareness is a weapon, and those who wield it rarely see the destruction they cause. When someone never doubts their motives, when they use morality as a shield against accountability, be careful. You may be in the presence of someone who has replaced their soul with their image. And once that happens, there is no line they won't cross, as long as they can justify it as good. Sign number 3. Their personality feels too perfect, but you feel uncomfortable around them. You meet someone who's always just right. They say the right things. They smile at the right times. They never offend, never stumble, never reveal anything raw. But something about it feels off. It's not what they say. It's not what they do. It's what they don't do. They never reveal uncertainty, never admit flaws, never show contradiction. Carl Jung called this over-identification with the persona, the social mask we wear to function in society. And when someone fuses too tightly with that mask, they become emotionally sterile. Their surface is smooth, impeccable, but their depths are missing. It's like talking to a hologram, attractive, articulate, impressive, but hollow. And the worst part? They don't even know they're doing it, because in trying so hard to be accepted, they've forgotten who they really are. Jung warned, the stronger the persona, the more repressed the shadow, and the more energy a person puts into appearing perfect, the more dangerous the chaos hidden underneath becomes. This isn't about shyness or social awkwardness, it's about a total substitution of authenticity for performance. You'll feel it in your nervous system. Your mirror neurons, the part of your brain wired for empathy, will sense the dissonance, and you'll experience it as inexplicable tension, distrust, a quiet alarm bell ringing for no obvious reason. You'll walk away from the conversation wondering, why am I so tired? Why didn't that feel real? Because it wasn't. Behind that mask is a person who has sacrificed spontaneity for safety, and in doing so, they've become a stranger to their own soul. The warning sign? They are always on, never real, never raw, never human. And the more polished their persona becomes, the more violent the eventual eruption of their repressed self will be. As Jung put it, the persona is that which in reality one is not, but which oneself and others think one is. Beware the ones who are always perfect, because nothing in nature is that smooth, unless it's been sharpened. Sign number 4, they suddenly shift, like you're talking to someone else. You're having a normal conversation, and then it happens. Their eyes glaze, their energy hardens, their tone changes, not slightly but profoundly. You feel it instantly. You're no longer speaking to the person in front of you. You're speaking to something else. Jung called this archetypal possession, a state where a person is no longer guided by their conscious self, but by a primordial pattern from the collective unconscious. It could be the martyr, the warrior, the prophet, the judge, the victim, the savior. And once it takes over, the individual's personal identity disappears. They don't say, I feel. They say, this is how it is. They're no longer engaging in dialogue. They're delivering doctrine. They no longer question their view. They become it. This is not madness in the clinical sense. It's a subtle takeover of the psyche by forces far older than the individual. Ancient traditions understood this well. In shamanic cultures, there were rituals to contain and guide these energies. But in modern life, there are no rituals, no elders, no protections. So when someone is unconsciously possessed by an archetype, and they don't know it, they become deeply persuasive and extremely dangerous. Because their certainty radiates authority, their words feel like prophecy, and people believe them, not because what they say is true, but because of the energy behind it. The sign? They speak with supernatural confidence even about things no one can know. Their personality loses flexibility, humor, humility, and in their presence you feel like you're being sized up, not by them, but by something through them. You may feel chills, you may feel disoriented, you may feel watched. Trust that, Jung said. The possession of the soul by an archetype is a danger that threatens everyone. When a person becomes one thing only, when all nuance vanishes and you feel like they've been overtaken by a mythic identity, step back, because what you're speaking to might not just be human anymore. Sign number 5. They keep repeating the same story. And you're somehow in it. At first, you feel empathy. They've been hurt, betrayed, abandoned. They've had a difficult past and they open up about it. But as time passes, something strange happens. You start noticing the pattern. Different characters, same script, same ending. And now, you are somehow playing a role in it. Carl Jung called this the compulsion to repeat, a psychological force that drives people to unconsciously recreate their earliest traumas over and over again. Not because they want to suffer, but because suffering is familiar. And in the psyche, what's familiar often feels safe. The danger? These people don't know they're doing it. They're not trying to deceive you. They are trapped in a loop their conscious mind can't see, and anyone who gets close becomes cast in their inner play. One day you're the savior, the next the betrayer, and no matter what you do, you can't seem to change the outcome. That's the sign. You feel like you're stuck in a role, not because of who you are, but because of what you represent to them. Jung believed this force could override free will, because these patterns come from the deep unconscious, from wounds too early, too painful, or too repressed to be processed. And until they're integrated, they don't just disappear, they repeat, over and over and over. In Buddhism, this is the original meaning of karma, not cosmic punishment, but the mechanical repetition of unresolved psychic material. And here's the most chilling part. People caught in this pattern often have an uncanny ability to attract those who will reenact the trauma. Or worse, they'll twist your kindness to fit their narrative. You'll be punished for wounds you didn't cause. You'll be treated like someone from their past, and no amount of explaining will set you free. The signal? When someone is always the victim, always misunderstood, always reenacting the same pain, with different faces, and when you start to feel like you're living inside a story that isn't yours, a drama you never auditioned for, pay attention. You're not helping them heal. You're helping them repeat, and Jung would tell you, until they become conscious of the pattern, they will call it fate. Sign number 6. They speak about others with concern. But it feels like poison. You hear them say things like, "I'm just really worried about her. I hope he's okay. Something just feels off. I don't want to gossip, but..." At first, it sounds like compassion, but your body tells a different story. There's something in their voice, too smooth, something in their eyes, too focused, something in the timing, too calculated. This is what Jung warned about when he spoke of the shadow moralist, the person who uses concern as a weapon of disguised envy. They don't attack outright. They erode, slowly, indirectly, with smiles, whispers, and moral undertones. Because to call someone out directly takes courage, but to suggest, insinuate, and plant subtle doubt takes strategy. And most dangerously, they often don't even realize they're doing it. They believe they're being caring, thoughtful, responsible. But what's really happening is projection in disguise. They're externalizing their discomfort about your growth, your independence, your light, by framing it as a moral crisis you're having. They say they're worried for you. But what they're really worried about is you changing. Because your evolution threatens their identity at the signal, they speak more about your path to others than to you. They never ask questions, only offer quiet judgments dressed up as observations. And slowly you begin to notice a shift in how people treat you before you've done anything different. That's the poison. Silent, social, corrosive. Machiavelli understood this when he wrote that true manipulation often wears the face of virtue. And Jung echoed it in his analysis of the persona. The more good someone tries to appear, the more likely they are to cast shadows they can't see. So when someone constantly speaks about others with vague worry, and when your instincts whisper that their concern isn't clean, trust that whisper. Because concern that doesn't come directly to you was never meant for healing. It was meant for control. Sign number 7, they start distancing themselves, but can't tell you why. Everything seemed fine. No argument, no tension, no obvious trigger. But slowly, they begin to drift. The messages get shorter. The conversations dry up. Their presence fades into silence. And when you ask what's wrong, they say, "Nothing." Or worse, They say nothing at all. Jung saw this as a symptom of deep unconscious conflict, not between you and them, but within themselves. Your growth, your light, your evolution has stirred something in them that they can't process. And so, instead of facing it, they retreat. Not to hurt you, but to protect the version of themselves they don't want to confront. Because your presence now reminds them of their own stagnation. Your calm reminds them of their chaos. Your clarity reminds them of their confusion. And rather than step into their discomfort, they leave. Quietly. Without reason. Without closure. Jung described this as a disintegration of emotional resonance. The invisible harmony that once existed between two psyches slowly coming undone as one evolves and the other resists. And the danger? They may blame you for the shift. Not openly, but subtly. You've changed. You're different now. You're not who you used to be. And in a way, they're right. You have changed. But not in the way they mean. You grew. And their nervous system read that growth as abandonment. This is where many people get stuck. They feel guilt, confusion. They chase the distance. They try to fix what was never theirs to fix. But Jung would warn, when someone pulls away without clarity, it often has nothing to do with what you've done, and everything to do with what they can no longer deny. Don't contort yourself to close a gap created by someone else's fear. Distance, when unexplained, is often the ego's last defense against transformation. Let them drift. Let the silence speak, because not everyone is meant to walk with you into your next becoming. Sign number 8. They need you to stay the same. You're making progress. Maybe you're healing. Maybe you're setting boundaries. Maybe you're simply becoming who you were always meant to be. And suddenly they flinch. Not outwardly, not obviously, but you notice it. They start reminiscing about the old you. They joke that you're acting different. They say things like, "You used to be more fun. I miss how you were. Don't forget where you came from." At first, it sounds like affection, but underneath, it's resistance. Not to you, to your evolution. Carl Jung warned that one of the clearest signs of unconscious projection is the subtle pressure others place on us to not grow, because your transformation forces them to confront their own inertia. Your wings remind them they haven't even tried to fly, so they romanticize your roots, not because they loved you more then, but because they felt more comfortable when you weren't threatening their narrative. This is not nostalgia, it's fear. Fear disguised as memory. Fear disguised as loyalty. Fear disguised as love. But love that fears your becoming isn't love. It's a prison. Jung called this dynamic a betrayal of individuation, the soul's natural process of unfolding into wholeness, and those who cannot walk that path themselves will try to hold you at the beginning of yours, not always maliciously, often unconsciously. They may truly believe they're being supportive, but their support only flows as long as you stay recognizable. The moment you outgrow the version of you that fit their comfort zone, they recoil. The sign? They guilt you for changing. They mock your new ideas. They subtly, or not so subtly, try to pull you back down to who you were, even if that version was breaking. And if you resist, they may accuse you of being arrogant, cold, too good. But Jung would remind you, the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. Not who they remember, not who they prefer, who you are, and no one who truly loves you will ask you to stay small so they can feel big. Final reflection. You've now seen it. The smile that hides a projection, the kindness that cloaks control, the silence that punishes growth, the whispers that erode from behind closed doors. These are not just toxic traits. They are signs of spiritual dissociation, when a person's inner shadow grows louder than their conscious self, and no longer recognizes its own face. Carl Jung believed the most dangerous people aren't the loudest. They're the ones who've forgotten who they are. Because when a person becomes estranged from their own darkness, they unconsciously begin to export it. To others, to you, to anyone who threatens the fragile image they've built. And that's the true danger. Not the evil in others, but the evil that is unseen in oneself. But here's the twist, the final paradox. Every sign we've explored here lives inside us too. We've all projected. We've all clung to personas, We've all tried to control what we didn't understand in others. The difference? Awareness. The ones who do damage without knowing it aren't necessarily evil. They're just asleep. And in that sleep, they become vehicles for shadow, for repetition, for chaos. So how do we protect ourselves? Not with fear, but with discernment, with presence, with a willingness to see clearly even when it hurts. To ask, does this person reflect their own shadow, or hide it in others? Does this connection nourish my growth, or punish it? Am I being asked to shrink, or to shine? Because at the end of the day, the real danger isn't just being near someone unconscious of their darkness, it's becoming unconscious of your own. And that's why Jung said, I would rather be whole than good. Because wholeness is not perfection, it's honesty, it's integration, it's the courage to carry your own darkness, so you don't hand it to someone else. So stay alert, not paranoid, present, and trust the part of you that senses when something's wrong, long before the mind can explain why, because your soul doesn't lie, and when it whispers, something here is off, you must listen, not to judge, but to stay free.